Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back to the cold, misty fjords and sunlit meadows of Viking Scandinavia. But we're not here to watch fierce warriors clashing swords or longships cutting through icy waters. No, tonight we're exploring something a little more heartwarming. Because for all their wild, fierce reputation, the Vikings had a surprisingly romantic side, especially when it came to their weddings. Yes, Viking weddings. Those ancient windswept ceremonies where rough, battle-hardened warriors became gentle, blushing grooms and proud shield maidens became radiant, joyful brides. A world where love was not just a feeling, but a promise, a sacred bond whispered beneath the endless northern sky. But before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And if you enjoy relaxing history stories that help you unwind, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love hearing from you. Now close your eyes and let's step back into that misty, magical world where the sea wind carries the scent of salt and pine, where towering mountains loom against the gray sky, and where Viking lovers carve their promises not just in words, but in steel. Imagine yourself standing on the rocky shore of a quiet fjord. The cold wind brushes against your face, the gray waves crashing against the black, jagged rocks. But here in this harsh, untamed land, you see something beautiful, a young couple standing beneath a tall, ancient tree, their hands clasped, their gazes steady. This is not just a quiet meeting of lovers. This is a promise of Viking betrothal. For the Vikings, love was not just a passing feeling. It was a bond, a partnership, a promise to stand together in a world where life was uncertain, where storms could sweep in from the sea, where wars could shatter the quiet of even the most peaceful village. And so a Viking marriage began long before the wedding day. It began with a quiet conversation between two families, sometimes as a matter of alliance, sometimes as a matter of love, but always with a sense of sacred duty. In a smoky, fire-lit longhouse, two fathers would sit across from each other, their voices calm but serious. They would speak of family honor, of dowries, and gifts of promises made and promises kept. But while these negotiations were practical, they were also filled with quiet and emotion. For the parents were not just arranging an alliance, they were entrusting their children's hearts. A young man, his gaze steady but nervous, would sit beside his father, his hands clasped tightly. A young woman, her cheeks blushing, would stand beside her mother, her fingers brushing against the soft wool of her dress. And though their voices were quiet, though their gazes were modest, their hearts raced, because this was not just a negotiation. This was the beginning of something sacred. And if the agreement was made, if the families shook hands, if the dowry was agreed upon, the young couple would exchange handfasting gifts, tiny meaningful tokens of their promise. A young man might give his beloved a simple polished stone, a quiet promise that his love would be as steady as the earth beneath their feet. A young woman might give her beloved a delicate woven cord, a whisper of faith that their bond would be as strong as the thread. But the most important gift of all was the sword, a family heirloom, a blade that the groom would present to the bride's family. It was not just a weapon, it was a symbol of trust, a promise that he would guard and protect his bride, that his family's honor would be joined with hers. And so beneath the watchful eyes of their families, beneath the tall ancient trees, the young couple would exchange these gifts, tiny whispers of love, quiet promises whispered in silver and steel. But this was only the beginning. For while the betrothal was a quiet, solemn promise, the wedding itself was something grand, a celebration of love, of family, of life. And so, as the cold wind sweeps across the misty fjord, as the gray waves crash against the shore, you see it a tiny silver pendant pressed into a young woman's hand, a rough polished stone placed in a young man's palm. Their fingers brush their gazes meet, and for a moment even the cold wind seems warm, because here in this world of steel and storm, even the fiercest of warriors know the quiet, gentle strength of love. And as the gray mist drifts across the cold, churning sea, you begin to understand Viking weddings were not just about alliances, about honor, about family pride. They were about love, about two hearts, two souls, whispering a quiet promise beneath the endless sky. And that promise, that quiet whisper of faith, was stronger than any storm. The cold, misty fjord fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing inside a warm, smoky longhouse, a place of crackling firelight, the scent of roasted meat, and the low murmur of voices. Here beneath the tall thatched roof, another Viking love story is beginning, not with a grand dramatic declaration, but with something quieter, something far more intimate. For in the world of the Vikings, a marriage did not begin at the altar. It began with a betrothal, a promise made between two families, a quiet agreement sealed with whispered words and heartfelt gifts. But beneath the careful negotiations, beneath the calm, respectful conversation, there was always a hint of romance. Because for the Vikings, even the most practical of arrangements carried a touch of emotion. A father might speak of dowries and land, of family honor and alliances, but he would also watch his daughter's face, the soft blush in her cheeks, the quiet, shy smile she tried to hide. A mother might speak of bridal gifts and promises, but her gaze would always linger on her son. The proud, nervous way he stood his fingers brushing against the edge of his tunic, and in the quiet shadows of the longhouse, the young couple would glance at each other, nervous, excited, their hearts racing. For while their families spoke of wealth and honor, they were speaking a different language, a language of quiet glances, of shy smiles, of whispered hopes. But even though the betrothal was a quiet, private moment, it was also a ceremony of sorts. Once the families had agreed, once the terms had been spoken, the couple would exchange handfasting gifts, small meaningful tokens of their promise. A young man might offer a simple silver ring, its surface polished to a soft shine. A young woman might offer a delicate woven bracelet, her fingers trembling as she ties it around his wrist. These were not just trinkets, they were whispers of love, quiet promises that their bond would be true. But the most important gift of all was the sword, a sacred symbol of the groom's honor and his promise of protection. He would present it to the bride's family, not as a weapon, but as a vow, a promise that his strength would guard her, that his honor would never waver. And the bride in return might offer a delicate silver brooch, a whisper of faith, a promise that she would stand by his side, that her love would never falter. But these gifts were not just symbols, they were memories. A young woman might keep the silver ring hidden beneath her cloak, her fingers brushing against it in quiet moments, her heart fluttering as she remembers the shy, nervous smile of her betrothed. A young man might wear the woven bracelet beneath his sleeve, his fingers brushing against the soft threads, a quiet reminder of her gentle touch. And even though the betrothal was a private promise, it was never truly secret. The families would gather, the parents would shake hands, the gifts would be exchanged, and then there would be a quiet moment, a pause, a breath, a whisper. Let this promise be true. The fathers would say, their voices calm but firm. Let this bond be blessed. The bride's father would place his hand on the young man's shoulder, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. You take her with honor. You guard her with strength. You cherish her with love. And the groom's father would place his hand on the young woman's shoulder, his voice warm but serious. You stand by him with faith. You comfort him with kindness. You honor him with joy. These were not just words, they were blessings. Tiny whispered promises that wrapped around the young couple like a warm cloak, a quiet shield against the cold, uncertain world. But while the betrothal was a sacred moment, it was also a time of joy. The families would feast at the firelight, dancing on their smiling faces, the air filled with the sweet scent of roasted meat and fresh bread. Songs would be sung, stories would be told, and laughter would fill the smoky air. A young man might sit quietly beside his betrothed, his fingers brushing against the woven bracelet on his wrist, his heart racing as he glances at her. A young woman might hide a shy smile behind her cup, her gaze lingering on his face, her cheeks warm beneath the soft glow of the firelight. But even here, beneath the laughter and the warmth, there was always a quiet sense of sacredness, a sense that this was not just a celebration, but a promise. And as the fire crackled, as the soft glow washed over the smiling faces, the young couple would feel it, that quiet, gentle warmth, a whisper of faith, a promise that their love would be true. But the betrothal was just the beginning, for in the days to come, the preparations would begin, the careful weaving of the bridal gown, the choosing of the sacred gifts, the gathering of the families. And all the while, beneath the quiet, practical preparations, that quiet, trembling excitement would grow like the soft, glowing embers of a fire, waiting to burst into warm, golden light. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a journey that began with a quiet promise whispered beneath the flickering firelight of a smoky longhouse. And for those who believed that promise was more powerful than any storm, the warm, smoky glow of the longhouse fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing beneath a bright, clear sky. The sun shines down on a wide green meadow, the soft breeze carrying the sweet scent of wildflowers, and in the distance, the blue-gray mountains rise like silent, watchful giants. But here, amid the sunlight and the gentle breeze, something beautiful is beginning, because now it is time for the exchange of symbolic gifts and tokens of love. For the Vikings, love was not just a feeling, it was a promise. And that promise was made real through the exchange of gifts, each one carrying a quiet, whispered meaning. Some of these gifts were simple, some were grand, but each one was a symbol, a tiny piece of the heart, wrapped in silver, bronze, or even a simple woven cord. You see a young couple standing beneath a tall, ancient tree, the warm sunlight filtering through the leaves. The young man, his fingers trembling slightly, reaches into his pouch and pulls out a small polished stone. It is smooth and cool, its surface marked with a faint swirling pattern, a gift from the sea, a promise of constancy, of strength. For you he whispers his voice soft but steady, a stone from the shore, strong and true, like my love. The young woman smiles, her cheeks warm beneath the sunlight. Her fingers brush against the stone, and then she reaches into the folds of her dress, drawing out a delicate woven cord, its bright threads glinting in the light. And for you she whispers her voice a gentle murmur, a cord I wove, strong as the bond between us. These were not just trinkets, they were whispers of faith, quiet, gentle promises that their love would be strong, that their hearts would be true. But these were only the simplest of gifts. You walk further and you see another couple, an older man and woman, their faces lined with age, but their eyes bright. The man holds out a tiny polished silver ring, its surface etched with a delicate twisting design. This was my mother's. He whispers his voice, a quiet, trembling murmur, and now it is yours. The woman smiles, her fingers brushing against the cool silver, her voice a soft, warm whisper. And this is for you. She presses a tiny polished amber bead into his palm, its warm golden surface catching the sunlight. A promise that our love will always be bright. But while some gifts were simple, others were grand. You see a young man, his proud, nervous gaze fixed on his beloved, holding a silver brooch, a delicate, intricate design of swirling leaves, its surface polished to a soft, warm glow. It is yours. He whispers, his voice a mix of pride and quiet fear, a token of my promise that I will always guard you. The young woman's fingers brush against the silver, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. And I will guard your heart as you guard mine. But the most sacred of all these gifts was the sword. You see it now. A young man, his face calm, but his hands trembling, presents a long, polished blade to the bride's family. The sword is not just a weapon, it is a promise of protection, of strength, of honor. For your daughter, he whispers, his voice steady, my family's sword, a promise that she will be guarded, that she will be honored. The bride's father takes the sword, his gaze steady, his voice a quiet murmur, and we give you our blessing. Honor her, cherish her, guard her with your life. And in that quiet moment, as the sunlight glints on the polished blade, as the young couple exchange shy, nervous smiles, you feel it, that quiet, gentle warmth, a whisper of faith, a promise wrapped in silver and steel. But it was not just the bride and groom who exchanged gifts. The families, too, would share tokens of respect, of honor. A young woman might offer a delicate silver comb, a gift to her mother-in-law, a promise of devotion. A young man might present a polished amber bead to his father-in-law, a promise of strength, of loyalty. And even the guests would bring gifts, tiny silver coins, polished stones, delicate brooches, each one a tiny promise, a whisper of support, a blessing for the young couple. But these gifts were not just objects, they were memories. A young woman might wear the silver brooch her husband gave her, her fingers brushing against its cool, polished surface in quiet moments, a reminder of his promise. A young man might carry the tiny stone his beloved gave him, its smooth, warm surface a quiet whisper of her love. And as the sunlight dances on the polished silver, on the warm golden amber, you begin to see it. These gifts are not just treasures, they are whispers of love, tiny promises wrapped in silver and stone. But even as the gifts are exchanged, even as the young couple's fingers brush their cheeks warm beneath the sunlight, there is always a quiet sense of sacredness, a sense that this is not just a celebration, but a promise. A young mother watches from the shade of a tall ancient tree, her fingers brushing against a tiny silver pendant, a gift from her husband on their wedding day. Her voice is a quiet, gentle murmur. Wear it always, my love. A promise that my heart is yours. And as you walk further, the sunlight warm on your face, the breeze brushing against your hair, you see it everywhere. Tiny silver pendants, polished amber beads, delicate woven cords, each one a whisper of love, a promise of faith, a tiny light in a world of shadows. Because for the Vikings, love was not just a feeling, it was a promise whispered in silver, in stone, and steel. And even in a world of storms and shadows, that promise was a light that could never fade. The warm, sunlit meadow fades behind you, and now you find yourself in the heart of a bustling Viking village, a place of thatched roofs, smoky longhouses, and the sweet, earthy scent of fresh pine and wildflowers. But today, the village is alive with excitement. Brightly woven banners hang from doorways, laughter and cheerful voices fill the cool, crisp air, and the sound of music drifts from the crowded village square. Because today is a wedding day. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a private promise. It was a grand, joyful celebration, a feast that brought families, friends, and neighbors together. Preparations began days in advance, and they were a community effort, a time when even the quietest of villagers would step forward, their hands ready, their voices bright. You walk through the bustling streets and you see it everywhere. Women carefully weaving delicate garlands of wildflowers, their fingers quick and skillful, their laughter bright. The flowers are not just decoration, they are blessings, tiny whispers of good fortune, each petal a promise of joy, of life, of love. A young girl carries a basket filled with bright, fragrant herbs, thyme, rosemary, sage, each one a whisper of protection, a promise of health and happiness. She smiles, her eyes wide with excitement, her voice a cheerful laugh. For the bride's hair, for good luck, but it is not just the women who prepare. You pass a group of men standing beside a great roaring fire, their hands busy turning a great spitted boar, the sizzling meat filling the air with a rich mouth-watering scent. One man, his thick beard flecked with ash, raises a horn of ale, his voice a cheerful shout. For the bride and groom, may their hearth be warm and their hearts be strong. The young boys run between the tables, their laughter bright, their arms filled with fresh-cut wood for the cooking fires. Even the youngest children play their part, their tiny hands carrying garlands of flowers, their cheeks flushed with joy. But amid all this joyful chaos, there is a quiet, sacred task, a task reserved for the bride's closest family. Inside the smoky warmth of the longhouse, a group of women work quietly, their fingers moving with practiced skill. They are weaving the bride's gown, a flowing, elegant dress of soft white linen, its surface embroidered with delicate swirling designs. The bride's mother stands beside them, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. The threads must be strong, like her heart. The stitches must be sure, like her faith. And it is not just the gown that is prepared. In another corner, an old woman carefully braids a delicate silver crown of wildflowers, a symbol of purity of life, of the blessings of the gods. For the bride's head, she whispers her voice a soft, reverent murmur, a crown of light, a promise of joy. The bride herself stands nearby, her cheeks warm, her gaze shy but bright. Her sisters stand beside her, their fingers carefully braiding her long golden hair, their voices a soft, gentle murmur. You will be beautiful, as bright as the dawn. But it is not just the bride who is prepared. In another quiet, shadowed corner of the longhouse, the groom stands with his brothers, his father's strong, weathered hands resting on his shoulders. Remember, my son? His father whispers his voice, calm but steady. A husband is a shield, not just a sword. You guard her, you honor her, you love her. The groom's fingers brush against the hilt of his sword, a simple polished blade, its surface etched with faint swirling designs. It is his family's sword, a gift from his father, a promise that he will guard and protect his bride. But while the family prepares, the village prepares as well. The longhouse is swept clean, its smoky rafters hung with fresh garlands of green pine and bright flowers. The tables are laid with heavy wooden plates, great steaming bowls of roasted meat, fresh bread, sweet honey cakes, and horned cups filled with frothy ale. You walk through the bustling square, and you see it, a group of young men raising a tall, carved wedding pole, its surface covered in delicate swirling designs, each one a symbol of love, of life, of family. At its top, a bright fluttering banner dances in the cool breeze, a promise of joy, of celebration. But even amid this joyful chaos, there is a quiet, sacred sense of purpose, a sense that this is not just a feast, but a blessing. The villagers whisper quiet prayers as they hang the garlands, their fingers brushing against the delicate petals, their voices soft but sure. May their love be strong, may their days be long, may their home be blessed. And as the warm sunlight dances across the crowded square, you see the joy in every face, the bright smiles, the cheerful laughter, the quiet whispered blessings. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a celebration of life, of love, of family. But amid all this joy, there is one more quiet, sacred preparation, a blessing whispered over the wedding feast, a prayer for prosperity, for health, for happiness. An old woman stands before the great steaming cauldron of mead, her wrinkled hands lifting a delicate silver cup. Her voice is a soft, trembling whisper. May the gods bless this feast. May they bless this union. May their love be strong as iron, sweet as honey. The villagers bow their heads, their voices a soft, gentle murmur. May it be so. But even as the feast is blessed, even as the tables are laid, even as the garlands dance in the cool breeze, there is always a quiet, trembling excitement, an electric warmth that fills the air, a sense that something beautiful is about to begin. And as the sunlight filters through the swaying green leaves, as the scent of wildflowers drifts on the cool breeze, you begin to see it. A Viking wedding is not just a ceremony, it is a celebration, a promise, a light that shines in even the darkest night. A young woman stands beneath the swaying garlands, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver crown in her hands. Her mother's voice is a quiet, gentle murmur. Be joyful, my love. Today is the first day of your new life. And as the sunlight dances on the bright shining garlands, As the warm breeze brushes against your face, you feel it a quiet, gentle warmth. A sense that even in this world of storms and shadows, there is always a light whispered in laughter, in flowers and love. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a promise, it was a celebration. A celebration of two hearts, two souls choosing to stand together to share the light. The bustling, joyful village square fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing in the cool, shadowed stillness of a quiet Viking longhouse. The warm, smoky light of the hearth casts soft, dancing shadows on the thick wooden beams, and the air is filled with the faint, sweet scent of fresh pine. But here in this quiet place, another important part of the Viking wedding is being prepared, a part that is both practical and deeply symbolic, the bride's dowry. For the Vikings, a dowry was not just a payment, it was a promise, a gift of love and support from the bride's family to the new couple. But it was also a symbol, a whisper of faith, that the marriage would be strong, that the bride would be cherished, that the couple would prosper. You see a young woman standing beside a large, sturdy chest, its surface carved with delicate swirling designs, her dowry chest. Her mother stands beside her, her fingers brushing against the smooth, polished wood, her voice a quiet, gentle murmur. These are your treasures, my love. Gifts from your family, promises that you will always be cared for. But what is inside this chest? Not just silver coins or fine jewelry, though those are sometimes given. No, the true value of a dowry is in the simple, practical gifts meant to help the young couple begin their new life together. You watch as the young woman's mother carefully places a thick woven woolen blanket into the chest, a promise of warmth, of comfort, a shield against the cold northern nights. Beside it, she places a set of polished bronze utensils, a quiet promise that the couple will always have food, that their table will always be full. But these are not just practical gifts, they are whispers of love. A delicate hand-woven linen dress, its soft white surface embroidered with tiny swirling flowers, a gift from the bride's grandmother, a promise that she will always be cherished. A tiny polished silver brooch, its surface etched with the faint swirling image of a hawk, a gift from the bride's father, a promise that she will always be protected. And it is not just the bride's family who give gifts. The groom's family also offers their support, often in the form of livestock, a promise of prosperity of life. A young man might offer a pair of strong, sturdy goats, their thick, shaggy coats, a promise of milk and wool. An old man might present a small, squawking chicken, a promise of fresh eggs of life renewed. But even these humble gifts carry a quiet, sacred meaning. A cow is not just a source of milk, it is a promise of strength, of nourishment. A sheep is not just a source of wool, it is a promise of warmth, of comfort. And then there are the tools of the trade gifts meant to help the young couple build their new life. A strong, polished axe, its sharp blade shining in the warm light, a promise of strength, of protection, of a warm, safe home. A sturdy spinning wheel, its smooth, polished wood, a promise of skill, of craftsmanship. But the most precious gift of all is not gold or silver or even livestock. It is something far more personal, a family heirloom, a quiet whispered promise passed down through the generations. You see it now. A young woman's mother carefully lifting a tiny, delicate silver pendant, its surface polished to a soft, warm glow. Her voice is a quiet, trembling whisper. This was my mother's, and her mother's before her, and now it is yours. The young woman's fingers brush against the cool, polished silver, her eyes filling with quiet, trembling tears. Thank you, Mother. And the mother's smile is warm, her fingers brushing against her daughter's cheek. Wear it always, my love, a promise that you are never alone. But while the dowry is a practical gift, it is also a quiet, sacred promise, a promise that the bride will always have a place, that she will always be cherished. It is a whisper of love from her family, a light that she carries into her new life. And it is not just the bride's family who feel this quiet, sacred weight. The groom, too, watches with quiet, steady eyes as the dowry chest is prepared, his fingers brushing against the hilt of his sword, his heart racing with quiet, trembling pride. For to receive a dowry is not just to receive a gift, it is to receive a promise that he will honor his bride, that he will cherish her, that he will guard her as fiercely as he guards his own life. And so, as the dowry chest is carefully packed, as the silver brooches and the thick woolen blankets are placed within you, begin to see it. This is not just a gift. It is a quiet, whispered promise, a shield of love that will guard the young couple in their new life. A young mother carefully ties a thick woolen shawl around her daughter's shoulders, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. This will keep you warm, my love. A whisper of my love, even when I cannot be with you. A father places a tiny, polished silver coin in his daughter's hand, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. For luck, my child, a promise that your heart will always be full. And as the young woman stands beside the dowry chest, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her neck, she feels it, a quiet, gentle warmth. A sense that even in this world of shadows and storms, even in a new home with new faces, she will never be alone. Because for the Vikings, a dowry was not just a payment, it was a promise of love, of support, of family. And even in the darkest night, that promise was a light that could never fade. The quiet, shadowed warmth of the longhouse fades behind you, and now you find yourself beneath a bright sunlit sky. The cool, crisp breeze rustles through the tall, swaying grass, and the soft scent of pine drifts on the wind. But here, amid the sunlight and the singing birds, another part of the Viking wedding is about to begin, a part filled with solemnity, strength, and quiet whispered promises. Because now it is time for the groom's sacred oath. For the Vikings, a marriage was not just a celebration, it was a sacred bond, a promise that was as strong as steel, as steady as the earth beneath their feet. And this promise was made real through the groom's vow, an oath spoken not just to his bride, but to the gods, to his family, to the very earth beneath his feet. You see the young groom standing beneath a tall, ancient tree, its wide, leafy branches swaying gently in the cool breeze. His face is calm, but his hands tremble slightly, his fingers brushing against the hilt of his sword, a blade passed down through generations, a gift from his father, a symbol of his family's honor. Beside him stands an old man, his weathered face calm but watchful, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Remember, my son, an oath is a bond of strength and of love. The young man nods, his heart racing, his gaze steady. And then with slow, careful steps, he steps forward, his feet brushing against the soft green grass, his gaze fixed on the small sacred altar of Thor, a simple, weathered stone, its rough surface etched with faint swirling designs. This is no grand golden temple. It is a simple, humble place, a quiet, sacred space where the earth meets the sky, where the wind whispers through the leaves, where the gods are near. And as the young man stands before the altar, the old man's voice rises clear and strong. By Thor's strength, by Odin's wisdom, by Freyja's blessing, speak your vow. The young man's voice is quiet at first, but as the wind brushes against his face, as the sunlight glints on the polished blade of his sword, his voice grows strong. I swear, by the strength of my arm, by the honor of my family, by the love in my heart, that I will guard her, that I will honor her, that I will love her. His fingers brush against the hilt of his sword, his gaze steady. By steel and by faith, by blood and by life, I will be her shield, I will be her strength, I will be her husband. The wind whispers through the tall grass, the leaves rustling like quiet applause, and the old man smiles, his voice a quiet murmur. Well spoken, my son. Let this promise be true. But while the groom's vow is a promise of strength, of protection, of honor, it is also a promise of love. A promise that he will not just guard his bride's body, but her heart. And this promise is not just a formality. It is a sacred bond, one that the gods themselves are believed to witness. For the Vikings, a broken vow was not just a shame. It was a curse, a shadow that could follow a man even beyond the grave. But the young groom's gaze is steady, his voice calm, his heart strong, because for him, this is not just a promise. It is a truth whispered in steel, a truth that shines in the warm golden sunlight. And it is not just the groom who speaks his promise. In the cool shade of the nearby forest, the bride stands with her mother, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her neck, a gift from her father, a whisper of his love. Her mother's voice is a quiet, gentle murmur. You will be strong, my love, a light in his life, a warmth in his heart. And though her cheeks are warm, though her hands tremble, the bride's voice is calm, her eyes bright. I will love him. I will honor him. I will be his joy. But while the vows are sacred, they are also personal. A young man might whisper a quiet, trembling promise, his voice a soft, gentle murmur. I will stand beside her, even in the darkest night. A young woman might whisper a quiet promise of her own. I will be his light, even in the coldest storm. And even though these vows are whispered beneath the open sky, beneath the tall swaying trees, they are not forgotten. For in the days to come, these promises will be sealed with a sacred gift, a symbol of faith, a whisper of strength. The young groom kneels before the sacred altar, his sword held before him, its polished blade catching the warm sunlight. And then with slow, steady hands, he draws a tiny, sharp dagger, its blade cold and bright. Carefully, reverently, he presses the tip of the dagger to his palm, a tiny bead of bright crimson blood welling up. And then with a quiet, whispered murmur, he touches the blade to the altar, his blood, his strength, his promise. By blood and by faith, I swear. But it is not just the groom who makes a promise. The bride's family ditto, to offer their blessing, whispers of faith, tiny gifts of silver and stone, delicate garlands of wildflowers. A promise that she will always be cherished, that she will always be safe. And as the wind whispers through the tall swaying grass, as the sunlight dances on the polished blade of the groom's sword, you see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of faith, a promise wrapped in sunlight and shadow. For the Vikings, a marriage was not just a bond, it was a shield, a promise that even in a world of storms and shadows, there would always be a light. The young man stands, his fingers brushing against the hilt of his sword, his heart racing, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. I will guard her, I will honor her, I will love her. And the wind whispers through the trees, the leaves dancing in the warm golden light. Because here in this quiet, sacred place, a promise has been made. A promise whispered in sunlight. A promise as strong as steel. A promise that will never fade. The cool, sacred shade of the ancient grove fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing in the bustling warmth of a Viking longhouse, a place alive with the soft murmur of voices, the gentle crackle of the fire, and the faint sweet scent of fresh pine and wildflowers. But here, amid the smoky glow and the quiet laughter, something beautiful is about to happen. Because now it is time for the traditional wedding clothing and accessories. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a celebration, a moment when even the humblest of villagers became radiant, when the bride became a vision of light and grace, and the groom stood proud and noble, a symbol of strength and honor. You see the young bride standing in the warm golden light, her cheeks warm, her gaze bright. Around her, a group of women, her mother, her sisters, her aunts, work with quiet, careful hands, each one playing a part in this beautiful transformation. Her long golden hair is carefully brushed, the soft strands catching the light. But this is not just a simple hairstyle. It is a sacred tradition. For the Vikings believed that a woman's hair was a symbol of her spirit, her strength, her beauty. And so for her wedding, the bride's hair is treated with special care. Her mother's fingers carefully weave delicate wildflowers into the golden strands. Bright blue cornflowers, pure white daisies, and tiny sprigs of fragrant thyme. Each flower is a blessing, a whisper of joy, a promise of love. And as the delicate blossoms are woven into her hair, the bride smiles, her fingers brushing against the soft petals. But it is not just her hair that is transformed. Around her neck, her mother fastens a delicate silver pendant, its polished surface catching the warm light. It is a gift from her father, a tiny silver crescent moon, a promise of protection, a whisper of his love. And then there is the wedding gown, a flowing, elegant dress of soft white linen, its surface embroidered with delicate swirling designs of green leaves and tiny silver threads. It is not just a garment, it is a work of art, a promise of grace, a light that wraps around her like a warm, gentle embrace. Her sisters carefully help her slip into the gown, their fingers brushing against the soft linen, their voices a quiet, joyful murmur. You look beautiful, like a goddess. But the gown is not complete without the belt of keys, a quiet, sacred symbol of the bride's new role as a keeper of the household. The belt is made of soft woven leather, its surface adorned with tiny polished silver keys that jingle softly as she moves. These are not just keys, they are symbols of trust, of responsibility, of honor. But even as the bride is adorned, the groom is also transformed. In another corner of the longhouse, his brothers and friends help him don his ceremonial cloak, a thick, heavy garment of dark green wool, its edges lined with soft silver fur. Around his shoulders, they clasp a silver brooch, a fierce, swirling design of a wolf, his family's symbol, a promise of strength. And then there is the sword, a polished, gleaming blade, its hilt wrapped in dark leather, its edge sharp and true. It is not just a weapon, it is a promise of protection, of honor, of strength. The groom's father steps forward, his weathered hands resting on the young man's shoulders, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Remember, my son, this is not just steel, it is faith. Guard her with honor. The young man nods his fingers, brushing against the hilt of the sword, his heart racing. And then, with slow, steady hands, his father lifts a polished silver circlet, a simple shining band that rests lightly on the groom's brow, a symbol of strength, of pride. But these are not just decorations. They are whispers of faith, tiny promises wrapped in silver and cloth. For the Vikings, even the simplest garment carried a sacred meaning. The bride's gown, with its delicate swirling designs, is not just beautiful, it is a shield, a promise of grace, of purity. The silver pendant at her neck is a light, a promise that she is cherished, that she is loved. The wildflowers in her hair are not just pretty, they are blessings, whispers of joy, of life. And the groom's sword is not just a weapon, it is a promise of protection, of strength. The silver brooch at his shoulder is a whisper of family pride, a promise that he will guard his bride as fiercely as he guards his own honor. But it is not just the bride and groom who are transformed. The guests, too, are dressed in their finest thick woolen cloaks, polished silver brooches, delicate silver rings. Even the youngest children wear tiny garlands of wildflowers, their bright smiles alight in the warm, smoky glow. You see a young mother tying a tiny silver crescent around her daughter's neck, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. A blessing, my love, a light to guide you. An old woman, her wrinkled fingers trembling slightly, fastens a delicate silver brooch at her throat, her voice a quiet, proud murmur. This was my mother's, and her mother's before her. But even amid this quiet, sacred preparation, there is always a gentle joy, a warm, cheerful laughter, a sense that this is not just a ceremony, but a celebration. The bride's mother smiles, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her daughter's neck, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. You are beautiful, my love, as bright as the dawn. The groom's father clasps his son's shoulder, his voice a warm, proud murmur. Stand tall, my son. You are a light, a shield, a promise. And as the bride and groom stand beneath the soft, warm light, their gazes meet, and you see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of joy, a promise, whispered in silver, in flowers, in soft linen and polished steel. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a transformation, a moment when two hearts, two souls, were wrapped in light, in joy, in faith. And as the warm, smoky light dances on the polished silver, as the soft scent of wildflowers drifts on the cool breeze, you feel it a quiet, gentle peace, a sense that even in a world of shadows and storms, there is always a light whispered in laughter, in flowers, in love. The warm, smoky glow of the longhouse fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing beneath a bright, open sky, a sky of soft silver clouds and cool, drifting mist. Before you stands a quiet, peaceful meadow, its tall green grass swaying gently in the breeze. But here, amid the soft rustle of leaves and the whispering wind, something sacred is about to happen. Because now it is time for the Viking wedding ceremony. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a promise between two hearts. It was a sacred bond, a union blessed not just by the families, but by the gods themselves. And this blessing was not just whispered, it was spoken beneath the open sky, where the wind carried the words, where the earth bore witness. You see the young bride standing beneath a tall ancient oak tree, its wide leafy branches spreading like a green canopy overhead. Her long golden hair is crowned with a delicate garland of wildflowers, her soft linen gown swaying in the gentle breeze. Around her neck hangs a tiny silver crescent moon, a gift from her father, a promise of protection. Beside her stands the groom, tall and strong, his thick green cloak swirling gently in the wind, his polished silver brooch shining in the soft light. At his side hangs his family's the sword, its hilt wrapped in dark leather, a symbol of honor, of strength. But they are not alone. Around them, their families stand, their faces calm, but filled with quiet joy. The old priest, his long gray beard swaying gently in the breeze, his voice, a quiet, steady murmur, stands before the couple, his hands lifted in blessing. By the strength of Thor, by the wisdom of Odin, by the grace of Freyja, the priest's voice rises clear and calm. We gather here to bless this union, a bond of love, a bond of faith. The wind rustles through the tall swaying grass, and the priest steps forward, his weathered hands holding a small, polished silver bowl, a bowl filled with fresh, clear water drawn from a sacred spring. This is not just water, it is a symbol of life, of purity, of the blessings of the gods. Water of life, light of the gods. The priest whispers, his voice a gentle murmur. Let this union be blessed. Let love be strong. Let faith be true. With slow, careful hands, he dips his fingers into the cool, clear water, and then he reaches out, gently touching the bride's forehead, his voice a soft, whispered blessing. May you be wise, may you be strong, may you be joyful. He turns to the groom, his voice steady. May you be strong, may you be honorable, may you be faithful. And then with a quiet, reverent gesture, he lifts the silver bowl, letting the cool water trickle over the earth at the couple's feet. A blessing for the land, a promise that their union will bring life, will bring joy. But this is only the beginning. For now, the couple must offer their own promise, not just to each other, but to the gods. The groom steps forward, his voice calm but strong, his gaze steady. By the strength of my arm, by the honor of my family, by the love in my heart, I promise to guard you, to honor you, to love you. His fingers brush against the hilt of his sword, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. In light and in shadow, in joy and in sorrow, I am yours. The bride's cheeks are warm, her eyes bright, but her voice is calm, her gaze steady. By the light of my heart, by the faith of my soul, by the joy in my spirit, I promise to cherish you, to comfort you, to love you. Her fingers brush against the delicate silver crescent at her neck. In sunlight, and in storm, in laughter, and in tears, I am yours. The wind whispers through the tall, swaying grass, the leaves rustling like quiet applause, and the priest smiles, his voice a warm, gentle murmur. Let these promises be true. Let this love be blessed. But even as the vows are spoken, even as the couple's hands clasp their gazes steady and bright, there is one more sacred ritual, an ancient whispered promise that makes their union unbreakable. The priest steps forward, holding a small polished bronze hammer, a symbol of Thor, the god of strength of protection. He holds it between the couple, his voice a calm, steady murmur. By the strength of Thor, may this union be guarded. By the light of the gods, may this love be blessed. The groom reaches out his fingers, resting on the cold, polished surface of the hammer. The bride's fingers rest beside his, and for a quiet, sacred moment, they stand together, their hands touching, their gazes steady. And then with slow, careful hands, the priest lifts the hammer, pressing it gently to the bride's forehead, then to the groom's. Strength in love, faith in joy, light in shadow. But the ceremony is not complete until the couple share the blessing cup, a large, polished silver goblet filled with sweet golden mead. The priest lifts the cup, his voice a soft, steady murmur. Drink, and let your hearts be filled. Drink, and let your love be blessed. The groom takes the cup, his fingers brushing against the cool silver, his voice a quiet whispered promise, to love, to faith, to joy. He sips, and then gently offers the cup to his bride. Her fingers close around the cool silver, her gaze meeting his, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. To love, to light, to life. She sips the sweet, warm mead, filling her with quiet warmth, and then the priest lifts his hands, his voice a calm, joyful murmur. By the blessing of the gods, by the strength of the earth, by the light of the sky, you are one. The couple's hands clasp, their gazes bright, their smiles warm. Around them, their families smile, their voices a soft, joyful cheer. And as the wind whispers through the tall, swaying grass, as the cool mist drifts around the ancient sacred tree, you see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of joy, a promise, whispered in light, in shadow, in faith. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a blessing whispered in sunlight, a promise that even in a world of storms and shadows, there is always a light wrapped in love. The soft, misty light of the sacred meadow fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing in the warm, shadowed glow of a bustling Viking longhouse. The air is filled with the soft crackle of the hearth fire, the warm scent of roasted meat, and the low murmur of cheerful voices. But here in this crowded, joyful space, another sacred moment is about to begin, because now it is time for the exchange of swords and rings. For the Vikings, a marriage was not just a promise of love. It was a bond of strength, a partnership rooted in honor and faith. And this bond was sealed, not just with words, but with sacred symbols that whispered of strength, of protection, of unity. You see the young groom standing before the warm, flickering firelight, his face calm, but his fingers trembling slightly. At his side hangs his family's sword, its polished, gleaming blade catching the soft glow. It is a weapon, yes, but it is also a promise of protection, a promise of faith. Beside him stands the bride, her long golden hair crowned with a delicate garland of wildflowers, her flowing white linen gown swaying gently as she moves. Around her neck hangs a tiny silver crescent moon, a gift from her father, a whisper of his love. But now, in this warm, sacred space, they will exchange something more, something that will bind their hearts, their souls, their lives. The groom steps forward, his fingers brushing against the hilt of his sword, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. This sword is my family's, a gift from my father, a symbol of honor, of strength, and now it is yours. With slow, careful hands, he lifts the sword, its polished blade, catching the warm firelight, and offers it to his bride. His gaze is steady, his voice a quiet whispered promise. By this sword I promise to guard you. By this blade I promise to honor you. The bride's fingers brush against the cool, polished steel, her eyes bright but calm. And then with slow, gentle hands, she takes the sword, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. And I promise to guard your heart as you guard mine. But even as she takes the sword, even as her fingers close around the cool, polished hilt, she steps forward, her hands lifting another gift, a delicate silver ring, its surface polished to a soft, warm glow. This ring is my promise, she whispers, her voice calm but warm. A promise of love, of faith, of joy. With slow, gentle hands, she slips the ring onto his finger, her gaze meeting his, her voice a soft, trembling murmur. In light and in shadow, in joy and in sorrow, I am yours. The groom's fingers brush against the cool silver of the ring, his heart racing, his voice a quiet whispered promise. And I am yours. But this exchange of gifts is not just a romantic gesture. It is a sacred bond, a promise that is witnessed not just by the family, but by the gods. The old priest, his weathered face calm but kind, steps forward, his voice a soft, steady murmur. By the strength of Thor, by the wisdom of Odin, by the light of Freyja, let these gifts be blessed. He lifts a small polished bronze hammer, its surface cool and bright, a symbol of Thor's strength. Gently, he touches the blade of the sword, his voice a quiet whispered blessing. Let this sword be a shield. Let this blade be a promise. He turns to the bride, his fingers brushing against the silver ring on her groom's hand. Let this ring be a light. Let this promise be true. The couple's hands clasp their fingers, entwined, the silver ring cool against their warm skin. Around them, their families watch, their faces bright with joy, their eyes filled with quiet pride. But even as the priest's voice fades, even as the young couple exchange quiet, nervous smiles, there is one more sacred gesture, a quiet, whispered promise that binds them. The groom gently takes the sword, his fingers brushing against the polished steel, and kneels before his bride. His voice, a quiet, steady murmur. By this blade I swear, I will guard you, I will honor you, I will love you. The bride's cheeks are warm, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. And I will be your light, your joy, your heart. But even this is not the end. For now, the sword must be placed in a sacred space. A place is where it will stand as a symbol of their union, their promise. And so, with slow, careful hands, The groom rises, and together they walk to the family hearth, the warm, crackling fire dancing on the polished blade. The groom carefully places the sword above the hearth, its gleaming blade catching the warm, golden light. And then, with a quiet, steady voice, he speaks. Here, before the light of the hearth, beneath the watchful eyes of the gods, we are one. The bride's fingers brush against the silver ring at his hand, her voice a soft whispered murmur. One heart, one life, one light. And as the warm firelight dances on the polished silver, as the soft crackle of the flames fills the air, you feel it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of faith, a promise whispered in steel and silver and light. But this sacred moment is not just for the couple. Around them, their families watch their smiles, bright their voices, a soft, joyful murmur. A young woman touches the silver ring on her own finger, her voice a quiet, happy whisper. Just like our wedding, so long ago. An old man, his weathered face lined with quiet pride, watches his son, his voice a soft, steady murmur. Stand strong, my son. Guard her with honor, cherish her with joy. And even the youngest children, their bright eyes wide with wonder, watch in quiet awe. A young girl whispers to her sister, her voice a soft, excited murmur. Is this what love is? Her sister smiles, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her neck. Yes, a promise, a light. And as the warm firelight dances on the polished steel, on the delicate silver ring, you begin to see it. A Viking wedding is not just a celebration. It is a promise whispered in silver, in steel, in light. Because for the Vikings, love was not just a feeling, it was a bond, a promise as strong as steel, as bright as fire. And even in a world of storms and shadows, that promise was a light that could never fade. The warm golden glow of the longhouse fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing in the heart of the bustling village square. The cool, crisp air is filled with the cheerful murmur of voices, the soft laughter of children, and the sweet, earthy scent of fresh pine and wildflowers. But here, amid the sunlight and the swaying green banners, something beautiful is about to happen. Because now it is time for the community's blessing, the role of the witnesses and supporters. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a private promise. It was a celebration shared by the whole village. Friends, neighbors, and even travelers passing through were welcome to join the feast, to witness the vows, to share in the joy. Because in this world of storms and shadows, no one stood alone. You see the young couple standing beneath a tall ancient oak tree, its wide leafy branches spreading like a green canopy overhead. Around them, their families stand, their faces bright with joy, their eyes filled with quiet pride. But beyond the families, beyond the parents and the siblings, you see them, the villagers, the friends, the neighbors, the quiet, watchful witnesses who give this union its strength. A tall, broad-shouldered man steps forward, his thick beard flecked with gray, his voice a calm, steady murmur. I have known the groom since he was a boy. I have seen his strength, his honor, his kindness. He will be a good husband. Beside him, an old woman, her wrinkled face lined with a warm smile, steps forward, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. I watched the bride grow from a bright laughing girl to a kind, wise woman. She will be a light in his life. And these are not just words, they are blessings. Tiny whispers of faith, quiet promises that this union is strong, that this love is true. But it is not just as the elders who speak. A young boy steps forward, his cheeks flushed, his voice a cheerful shout. I saw him catch a fish this big. He is strong. A young girl, her fingers clutching a tiny garland of wildflowers, laughs her voice, a sweet, happy whisper, and she showed me how to braid my hair. She is so kind. Their laughter fills the cool, misty air, and even the oldest of the villagers smile, their eyes bright, their hearts warm. For in this moment, the couple is not just a pair of lovers, they are a part of the village, a light that shines in the hearts of all who know them. But while the blessings are whispered, while the laughter fills the air, there is one more sacred act, a promise that the couple will always be supported, that they will never stand alone. You see it now, a simple, polished silver chain, its surface catching the warm sunlight. The priest steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. By the strength of Thor, by the wisdom of Odin, by the grace of Freya, let this union be blessed. Let it be guarded, let it be cherished. With slow, careful hands, he lifts the silver chain, gently placing it around the clasped hands of the couple. This is not just a decoration. It is a symbol, a whisper of faith, that their bond will be strong, that they will always have support. And then, with a quiet, gentle smile, the priest turns to the villagers, his voice a clear, calm call. Do you witness this promise? Do you bless this union? The villagers step forward, their hands reaching out, their voices a warm, joyful murmur. We do. A young woman steps forward, a tiny silver coin pressed into her hand. A gift for luck. An old man, his hands rough but gentle, offers a small polished stone, its surface smooth and cool, a promise of strength. A young mother, her arms wrapped around her smiling child, lifts a tiny garland of wildflowers, her voice a soft, joyful whisper, a blessing for joy. And even the children step forward, their tiny hands offering delicate woven bracelets, their laughter bright and clear. For love, these are not just gifts, they are whispers of faith, tiny lights that wrap around this young couple like a warm, gentle cloak. Because for the Vikings, love was not just a private bond. It was a light that touched everyone, a joy that was shared by all. But even as the blessings are whispered, even as the gifts are offered, there is a quiet, sacred moment, a moment when the couple must give their own promise, not just to each other, but to their community. The young groom steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. I promise that I will guard her, that I will honor her, that I will love her. The bride's voice is warm, her gaze steady, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver chain. And I promise that I will stand by him, that I will be his light, that I will be his joy. The villagers smile, their hands reaching out, their voices a warm, cheerful cheer. May it be so, but even this is not the end. For now the couple must give a gift in return, a whisper of gratitude, a promise that they will be a light in the village, a blessing to their people. The groom lifts a small polished bronze cup, its surface warm beneath his fingers, and fills it with sweet golden mead. His voice is calm but joyful, his smile bright. To our friends, to our family, to all who stand with us, may you be blessed as we are blessed. The bride takes the cup, her voice a soft, joyful murmur. May your days be bright, may your homes be warm, may your hearts be full. And with that, the cup is passed first to the parents, their smiles warm, their eyes filled with quiet pride. Then to the elders, their hands gentle, their laughter bright. And finally, to the children, their wide eyes filled with wonder, their cheerful laughter a light in the cool, misty air. But even as the sweet mead is shared, even as the laughter fills the cool green meadow, there is always a quiet, sacred warmth, a sense that this is not just a celebration, but a promise. A young woman ties a tiny silver ribbon around her wrist, her voice a soft whispered prayer. May love be strong, may joy be true. An old man rests his hand on the groom's shoulder, his voice a calm, steady murmur. Stand tall, my son, guard her with honor, cherish her with joy. And as the young couple stand beneath the swaying green branches, their hands clasped, their eyes bright, you see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of faith, a promise, whispered in laughter, in silver, in joy. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a private promise, it was a light that shone in the hearts of all who witnessed it. The cheerful laughter of the village square fades behind you, and now you find yourself standing in the warm, shadowed glow of a quiet, cozy longhouse. The crackling firelight dances on the thick wooden beams, casting soft, flickering shadows, and the air is filled with the sweet, earthy scent of fresh pine. But here, in this peaceful private space, another part of the Viking wedding is about to begin, a part both sacred and intimate, because now it is time for the wedding night rituals. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a public celebration, it was a deeply personal bond, a quiet promise made not just before the gods and the village, but between two hearts, two souls. And this sacred promise was sealed in the soft, shadowed warmth of the couple's bridal chamber. You see the young bride standing beside the warm, crackling hearth, her long golden hair cascading over her shoulders, the delicate garland of wildflowers now resting gently on a polished wooden shelf. Around her neck hangs the tiny silver crescent moon, a gift from her father, a whisper of his love. Beside her stands the young groom, his thick green cloak draped over a nearby chair, his polished silver brooch catching the soft firelight. His fingers brush nervously against the silver ring on his hand, the ring she gave him, a quiet promise of her love. But even in this quiet, shadowed space, they are not truly alone. Standing beside the warm, flickering fire, the old priest's voice is a calm, gentle murmur, his weathered hands lifted in blessing. By the light of the fire, by the strength of the earth, by the warmth of the hearth, let this union be blessed. With slow, careful hands, he lifts a small, polished silver bowl, its surface catching the soft golden glow. Inside the bowl is sweet, golden mead, its warm, honeyed scent drifting gently in the air. The priest's voice is calm but warm. Drink and let your hearts be filled. Drink, and let your love be blessed. The young groom takes the bowl, his fingers brushing against the cool silver, his voice a quiet whispered promise. To love, to joy, to life. He sips the sweet warm mead, filling him with quiet warmth, and then gently offers the bowl to his bride. Her fingers close around the cool silver, her gaze meeting his, her voice a soft trembling whisper. To light, to faith, to love. She sips, and the sweet warmth fills her with a gentle peace. But even as they share the mead, even as the warm, honeyed sweetness touches their lips, there is another sacred act, one that whispers of love, of trust, of unity. The young groom carefully takes a small, polished bronze knife, its surface glinting softly in the firelight. But this is not a weapon. It is a symbol, a promise. With slow, careful hands, he cuts a small, thin lock of his hair, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. A part of myself, a promise that I give to you. He offers the tiny lock of hair to his bride, his gaze steady, his heart racing, and with gentle hands, she accepts it, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. And I give you this. Her fingers carefully cut a tiny lock of her own golden hair, her voice a quiet, trembling murmur. A part of myself, a promise that I give to you. The young groom smiles, his fingers brushing against the soft golden strands. Then we are one. But even as this quiet, sacred promise is shared, there is another gentle ritual, a quiet whispered prayer that their union will be blessed. The bride's mother stands at the doorway, her fingers clutching a tiny silver pendant, her voice a soft trembling whisper. May your love be strong, may your hearts be warm. Beside her stands the groom's father, his voice a quiet steady murmur. May your days be bright. May your nights be peaceful. And then with slow, careful steps, they step back their voices, a soft whispered blessing. May it be so. But even as the parents leave, even as the quiet, shadowed warmth of the longhouse settles around the young couple, there is still one more quite sacred act. The young groom carefully lifts the thick woven woolen blanket, a gift from his mother, its soft, warm surface embroidered with delicate, swirling designs. He wraps it around his bride's shoulders, his voice a soft, gentle murmur. For warmth, for comfort. Her fingers close around the soft, warm fabric, her cheeks warm, her voice a quiet, joyful whisper. Thank you. And then with slow, careful steps, they sit together side the warm, crackling hearth, the soft, golden firelight dancing on their smiling faces. Their hands clasp their fingers entwined, and for a moment there is only quiet, the soft crackle of the fire, the gentle warmth of the blanket, the soft shadowed peace of the bridal chamber. But even in this quiet, shadowed moment, there is a quiet, gentle joy, a sense of warmth, of light, of love. The young groom's fingers brush against the delicate silver ring on his hand, his heart racing, his voice a soft, whispered murmur. I promise, I will love you always. The bride's fingers touch the tiny silver crescent at her neck, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. And I will love you. But these are not just whispers, they are promises. Promises whispered in firelight, in soft linen, in gentle laughter. And even as the firelight dances on the warm, shadowed walls, even as the cool, misty night settles around the quiet village. You see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of peace, a promise, whispered in shadow and light. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a celebration, it was a union not just of two bodies, but of two souls, two hearts. And even in the darkest night, that union was a light that could never fade. The warm, quiet glow of the bridal chamber fades behind you, and now you find yourself back in the bustling village square. But this time, it is filled with laughter, with music, with the sweet, mouth-watering scent of roasted meat and fresh bread. Because now it is time for the wedding feast and festivities, a celebration of love, of joy, of life. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a solemn ceremony, it was a joyful festival, a time when the entire village came together to share in the couple's happiness. Friends, neighbors, travelers, everyone was welcome, and the feast was a light that shone across the village. You see the long wooden tables stretched beneath the bright open sky, their surfaces covered with steaming dishes, roasted pork, fresh fish, thick golden bread, sweet honey cakes, and great frothy horns of ale. Around the tables, the villagers gather, their faces bright with smiles, their laughter a warm, cheerful murmur. The young bride and groom sit at the head of the table, their hands clasped, their cheeks warm beneath the bright sunlight. Around them, their families sit, their smiles bright, their eyes filled with quiet pride. But even as the feast begins, there is a quiet, sacred ritual, a blessing whispered over the food, a promise of joy, of abundance, of peace. The old priest stands, his weathered hands lifted in blessing, his voice a calm, steady murmur. By the light of the gods, by the strength of the earth, by the grace of the sea, let this feast be blessed, let joy be full, let love be strong. The villagers bow their heads, their voices a soft, joyful murmur, may it be so, and then, with a cheerful shout, the feast begins. The great steaming platters are passed from hand to hand, the frothy ale is poured, the sweet honey cakes are shared. Laughter fills the air bright and clear, and the warm golden sunlight dances on the bright shining faces. You see a young boy, his cheeks flushed, struggling to lift a great steaming leg of roasted pork, his voice a cheerful laugh. For the bride and groom, beside him, an old woman hands the bride a thick golden honey cake, its surface warm and sweet. Her voice is a soft, joyful murmur. A blessing, my dear, for sweetness, for joy. The bride smiles, her fingers brushing against the warm golden crust, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. Thank you. But even as the food is shared, even as the ale flows, there is music, bright, cheerful tunes played on fiddles and flutes, the sweet light sound of harps. A young woman stands beside the great roaring fire, her fingers dancing over the strings of her harp, her voice a soft, cheerful song. A toast to the bride, so fair and bright, a light in the darkness, a joy in the night. A toast to the groom so strong and true, a shield in the storm, a light in the blue. The villagers cheer their hands, raise their voices, a warm, cheerful shout. To the bride and groom, the young groom laughs, his hand resting on the bride's, his voice a cheerful, joyful shout. To all of you, but the songs are not just for laughter, They are stories, tales of love, of courage, of joy. An old man stands beside the fire, his weathered face calm but bright, his voice a deep, steady murmur. Once in the misty fjords, beneath the gray, endless sky, there was a warrior who loved a fair maiden. But the sea called to him, its waves crashing, its wind howling. And so he left his heart, torn, his soul filled with longing. The villagers listen, their faces calm but bright, their hands wrapped around their steaming cups, their eyes filled with quiet wonder. But even amid the laughter, the music, the cheerful shouts, there are quiet, sacred moments, moments when the couple's love shines like a light. You see the young bride and groom standing beside the great roaring fire, their hands clasped, their smiles warm. The groom's voice is a quiet, steady murmur. I will love you always. The bride's cheeks are warm, her fingers brushing against the silver crescent at her neck. And I will love you. But this is not just a private promise. It is a light that shines on all who see it. A young girl, her cheeks flushed, whispers to her sister, "Do you think I will find a love like that?" Her sister smiles, her fingers brushing against her own silver pendant. If your heart is true, but the feast is not just a time for songs and stories. It is a time for games, for joyful challenges, for laughter that rings out beneath the bright open sky. You see a group of young men wrestling in the soft green grass, their cheerful shouts filling the cool, misty air. A young man lifts his friend, his voice a joyful laugh. I am the strongest. Beside them, a group of young women dance in a wide, swirling circle, their long, flowing gowns swaying, their bright laughter a sweet, joyful song. One young woman, her fingers brushing against the wildflowers in her hair, spins beside the bride, her voice a cheerful shout. Dance with us. The bride laughs, her fingers lifting the hem of her gown, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. I will, but even as the laughter fills the air, even as the bright, cheerful songs rise beneath the wide open sky, there are quiet, tender moments. Moments when the couple's love shines like a warm, gentle light. You see the young groom standing beside the fire, his fingers brushing against the delicate silver ring on his hand, his voice a soft whispered promise. I will guard you. I will cherish you. The bride's fingers brush against the tiny silver crescent at her neck, her voice a quiet, trembling whisper. And I will be your joy. But even as the feast continues, even as the laughter and the songs fill the cool, misty air, there is a quiet, sacred sense of joy, a sense that this is not just a celebration, but a promise that this love will be strong, that this joy will be true. A young mother lifts her tiny child, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. Look, my love, this is what happiness is. An old man lifts his frothy cup of ale, his voice a cheerful shout. To the bride and groom, may their love be strong, may their days be bright, and even the youngest children, their cheeks flushed, their bright eyes wide, run between the tables, their laughter bright and clear. A young girl spins beneath the swaying green banners, her voice a sweet, joyful laugh. Love forever. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a ceremony, it was a feast of laughter, of love, of joy, a light that shone in the hearts of all who shared it. The joyful sounds of the feast begin to fade, and now you find yourself standing beneath the cool, soft light of the setting sun. The sky is a canvas of warm oranges and purples, the last golden rays touching the swaying green grass, and the gentle breeze carries the sweet scent of wildflowers. But here, amid the soft, fading light, another beautiful tradition is about to begin. Because now it is time for the gift-giving ceremony, a moment when the guests show their love, their support, and their blessings for the young couple. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a union of two hearts. It was a bond that touched the entire village, a light that shone in every home. And so the guests did not just come to eat, to dance, to laugh. They came to share their love, their faith, their blessings. And they did so with gifts. Simple, meaningful gifts that whispered of support, of joy, of faith. You see the young bride and groom standing beneath the tall, ancient oak tree, their hands clasped, their cheeks warm beneath the soft golden light. Around them, the villagers gather, their faces bright, their hands filled with tiny treasures. A young woman steps forward, her fingers holding a delicate woven bracelet, its colorful threads bright and cheerful. Her voice is a soft, joyful murmur. For your wrist, my dear, a promise of joy, of happiness. The bride smiles, her fingers brushing against the soft, colorful threads, her voice a quiet, trembling whisper. Thank you. An old man steps forward, his weathered hands offering a small, polished silver coin, its surface catching the warm light. For luck, my son. May your home be blessed, may your heart be full. The groom smiles, his fingers brushing against the cool silver, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Thank you. But these are not just gifts. They are whispers of faith, tiny promises wrapped in silver, in thread and light. A young mother steps forward, her arms wrapped around her smiling child, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. This is for your home. She offers a small, polished wooden bowl, its surface etched with delicate, swirling designs. May your table always be full. The bride's fingers brush against the cool, polished wood, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. Thank you. But even as the guests offer their gifts, there are those who bring something to more gifts, filled with quiet, sacred meaning. An old woman, her silver hair swaying gently in the cool breeze, steps forward, her fingers carefully lifting a tiny, polished amber bead, its warm golden surface glowing in the soft light. For love, my dear, a light in your heart. The bride's eyes shine, her fingers rushing against the warm, glowing amber. I will cherish it. And then, with slow, careful hands, the groom's father steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. For my son and his bride, he holds out a polished bronze key, its surface cool beneath his weathered fingers. A promise that your home will always be strong, that your hearts will always be safe. The young groom's fingers close around the cool bronze, his voice a quiet, steady whisper. Thank you, Father, but it is not just the elders who bring gifts. A young boy steps forward, his cheeks flushed, his voice a cheerful shout. I caught this for you. He offers a small, wriggling fish, its silver scales glinting in the soft light. The villagers laugh, their cheerful voices filling the cool, misty air, and the young couple smile, their hands brushing against the cool, slippery fish. Thank you, they laugh. But while some gifts are simple, others are sacred. The old priest steps forward, his weathered hands holding a small, polished silver pendant, its surface etched with delicate swirling designs. A blessing, he whispers, his voice, a calm, steady murmur, a light in the darkness, a promise that your love will always be strong. The bride's fingers brush against the cool silver, her voice a soft, trembling whisper. Thank you. But even as the gifts are offered, even as the warm golden light bathes the young couple in a gentle glow, there is one more sacred act, a gift from the couple to their guests, a whisper of gratitude, a promise of joy. The young groom steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. You have given us joy. You have blessed our love. You have filled our hearts. The bride's voice is a soft, trembling whisper, and we will never forget. With slow, careful hands, the young couple offer small, polished honey cakes, their surfaces warm and sweet, each one a tiny golden light. For you, for joy, for sweetness. The guests smile, their hands reaching out, their voices a warm, cheerful murmur. Thank you. May your love be sweet. May your days be bright. But even as the honey cakes are shared, even as the laughter and the cheerful voices fill the cool, misty air, there is always a quiet, sacred warmth, a sense that this is not just a celebration, but a promise. A young mother, her fingers brushing against the tiny silver pendant at her neck, whispers to her daughter, "Do you see, my love? This is what joy is." An old man, his weathered face bright with a warm smile, lifts his frothy cup of ale, his voice a cheerful shout. To the bride and groom, may their love be strong, may their days be sweet. But even amid the cheerful laughter, the sweet scent of honey cakes, the warm golden light, there is a quiet, sacred sense of joy, a sense that this love, this light is something that will never fade. And as the young couple stand beneath the tall, swaying branches, their hands clasp, their eyes bright, you see it, a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense of faith, a promise, whispered in silver, in amber, in light. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a private promise, it was a gift of joy, of love, of faith. And even in a world of storms and shadows, that gift was a light that could never fade. The soft, warm glow of the sunset begins to fade, and now you find yourself standing beneath the cool silver light of a misty twilight. The sky is a deep, soft blue, the first faint stars glimmering like tiny silver sparks, and the gentle breeze carries the sweet scent of wildflowers and fresh pine. But here beneath the soft silver sky, another chapter of the wedding is beginning. Because now it is time for the newlyweds to begin their new life together. For the Vikings, a wedding was not just a celebration, it was a transformation. A young man and a young woman became husband and wife, two hearts becoming one, two souls joining beneath the wide, endless sky. But this union was not just a private promise. It was a new chapter, a journey they would share. You see the young bride and groom standing together at the edge of the village, their hands clasped, their fingers entwined. Around them, their families stand, their faces bright, but touched with quiet emotion. The bride's mother steps forward, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her daughter's neck. "Be strong, my love." She whispers, her voice a soft trembling murmur. "Be joyful, be kind." The bride's father rests his hand on her shoulder, his voice a calm, steady murmur. "Remember, you are never alone. You carry our love with you." The young bride's eyes shine with quiet, trembling tears, but her smile is warm, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. "Thank you for everything." Beside her, the groom's father steps forward, his weathered hands resting on his son's shoulders. "Stand tall, my son. Guard her with honor, cherish her with joy." The groom's mother, her fingers brushing against her son's cheek, smiles, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. "May your home be warm. May your hearts be full." But even as the parents offer their quiet, whispered blessings, there is another sacred gesture, a promise that the young couple will always be a part of the village, that they will always be loved, that they will always have a place. The old priest steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. "By the light of the gods, by the strength of the earth, by the warmth of the hearth, let this union be blessed. Be." With slow, careful hands, he lifts a small, polished bronze lantern, its soft, warm light glowing gently in the cool, misty air. "This is the light of your new home, a light that will never fade." The young groom's fingers brush against the cool, polished bronze, his voice a quiet, steady whisper. "Thank you." But even as the lantern is lifted, even as its warm, golden light dances in the cool breeze, there is one more sacred act, a procession, a journey that leads the young couple to their new home. You see it now, the villagers, their hands holding small flickering torches, their voices a soft, joyful murmur. The young couple stands at the head of the procession, the warm golden lantern swaying gently in their hands. And then, with slow, careful steps, they begin to walk. The soft, cool mist swirls around them, the warm golden light of the torches dancing in the silver twilight. Around them, the villagers sing their voices, a soft, cheerful song. "May your days be bright, may your nights be warm, may your love be strong, may it weather the storm, may your home be blessed, may your hearts be true, may the light of love always shine for you." The young bride's fingers brush against the delicate silver crescent at her neck, her heart racing, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. "This is our home now." The young groom's hand clasps hers, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Together, but this journey is not just a walk, it is a sacred procession, a promise that the young couple will always have the love, the faith, the light of their village. And as they reach the small, cozy cottage at the edge of the village, they turn their eyes bright, their smiles warm. The villagers stand beneath the misty silver sky, their torches swaying gently, their voices a soft, joyful cheer. "Blessings, blessings upon your home." The old priest steps forward, his voice a calm, steady murmur. "Let this home be blessed. Let this hearth be warm. Let this love be true." With slow, careful hands, the young groom opens the door, the warm golden light of the lantern spilling into the cozy, shadowed room. The bride steps across the threshold, her fingers brushing against the soft woven woolen blanket that rests on the wooden chair, a gift from her mother, a promise of warmth. The young groom follows his fingers, brushing against the polished silver key at his belt, a gift from his father, a promise of strength of protection. But even as they step into the warm, shadowed room, even as the soft golden light dances on the polished wood, they are not alone. The villagers stand just outside their torches, glowing like tiny stars, their voices a soft, cheerful song. Light in the darkness, warmth in the cold, love that is faithful, joy that is bold. May your home be a haven. May your hearts be strong. May your love be a light all the night long. But even as the song fades, even as the villagers turn to walk back to the warm, welcoming light of the village, there is always a quiet, sacred sense of peace, a sense that this is not just a house, but a home filled with light, with laughter, with love. The young bride stands beside the warm, crackling hearth, her fingers brushing against the delicate silver pendant at her neck, her voice a soft, joyful whisper. This is our home. The young groom's arms wrap around her, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Our home, our light. But even as they stand together, their smiles warm, their hands clasped, there is always a quiet, sacred warmth, a sense that this is not just a beginning, but a promise that even in a world of shadows and storms, they will always have each other. Because for the Vikings, a wedding was not just a celebration, it was a journey that began with a promise, a journey that led to a home filled with light. And even in the darkest night, that home was a light that could never fade. The warm golden glow of the lantern fades, and now you find yourself standing beneath a quiet, starlit sky. The soft silver moonlight spills across the village, the tall dark trees swaying gently in the cool breeze, and the distant mountains rise like silent shadowed guardians. But here in this peaceful moonlit world, another chapter of the wedding story begins. Because now it is time for the whispers of love, Viking love legends and lasting traditions. For the Vikings, love was not just a feeling, it was a story, a light that shone through the darkest night, a bond that even the gods themselves could not break. And these stories, these quiet, whispered legends, were more than just tales. They were promises, memories, whispers of faith. You see a group of villagers gathered around the warm, crackling fire in the village square, their faces bright beneath the soft silver moonlight. An old woman, her silver hair swaying gently in the cool breeze, leans forward, her voice a calm, steady murmur. Let me tell you of Sigurd and Brynhild, the fearless warrior and the radiant shield maiden. Their love was a light, a fire that burned beneath the gray, misty sky. The children lean closer, their bright eyes wide with wonder, their hands wrapped around their steaming cups of sweet mead. Even the adults listen, their faces calm, their eyes bright. They met on a misty mountain where the wind whispered through the tall, swaying trees. Sigurd, the mighty warrior, stood beneath the gray, endless sky, his sword gleaming like silver, his heart strong. And Brynhild, the proud shield maiden, stood beside him, her eyes fierce, her voice strong. The old woman's voice is a soft, steady murmur, but though their love was strong, though their hearts were true, the shadows whispered. Jealousy, pride, and fate wove a dark, tangled web. Their love was tested, their bond strained. The children's faces are filled with quiet wonder, their wide eyes shining in the soft silver light. But even as the shadows of the story whisper, there is always a light that shines through the darkness. But even in the darkest night, even beneath the gray, endless sky, their love was a light that could never fade. The villagers smile their voices, a soft, joyful murmur, a light that never fades. But even as the story of Sigurd and Brynhild fades, another story begins, another whisper of love, of faith, of light. An old man, his weathered face calm but bright, steps forward, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. And then there is the tale of Hervor and Heidrek, the fierce warrior maiden and the wise wandering king. The children lean forward, their eyes wide, their hands clasped. "Tell us, grandfather." The old man smiles, his voice a calm, gentle murmur. Hervor was fierce, her sword as sharp as the northern wind, her heart as bright as the morning sun. She wandered the misty fjords, her blade gleaming like silver. And yet beneath her strength there was a quiet, gentle light, a light that shone in her love for Heidrek. But their love was tested by shadow, by storm, by the whisper of fate. And yet even in the darkness, even beneath the gray, endless sky, their love was a light that could never fade. The children smile their voices, a soft, joyful whisper, a light that never fades. But these are not just stories, they are whispers of faith, tiny lights that dance beneath the wide starlit sky. And for the young couple who now stand together beneath the soft silver moonlight, they are promises that love is strong, that joy is true, that light can never fade. You see the young bride and groom standing at the edge of the village, their hands clasped, their eyes bright. Around them, the villagers stand, their faces calm, their smiles warm. The young bride's voice is a soft, trembling whisper. Will our love be like that? Like the stories? The young groom's fingers brush against the silver ring on his hand, his voice a quiet, steady murmur. Yes, a light that never fades. But even as they share this quiet, whispered promise, the villagers begin to offer their own stories, their own memories, their own whispers of faith. An old woman, her silver hair swaying in the cool breeze, smiles, her voice a warm, joyful murmur. I remember when I met my dear Olaf. He was so shy, and I was so bold. The villagers laugh, their cheerful voices filling the cool, misty air. A young mother, her fingers brushing against the tiny silver crescent at her neck, smiles, her voice a soft, gentle murmur. We were so young, so afraid, but our love was strong. Even the children share their quiet, whispered dreams. A young girl, her bright eyes wide, whispers to her sister, "One day, home, I will have a love like that, a light that never fades." But even as the stories are shared, even as the laughter and the quiet, joyful whispers fill the cool, misty night, there is always a quiet, sacred warmth, a sense that love is not just a feeling, but a light that shines through the darkest night. And as the young bride and groom stand beneath the soft silver moonlight, their hands clasped, their eyes bright. You see it, a quiet, gentle light, a promise, whispered in stories, in laughter, in joy. Because for the Vikings, love was not just a tale, it was a promise that even in a world of storms and shadows, there is always a light that never fades. The mist clings to the quiet village, the soft silver moonlight dancing on the swaying green leaves, the cool breeze brushing gently against your face. But even as the shadows whisper, even as the darkness wraps around the quiet sleeping village, there is always a light that shines in every heart, a light that whispers of love, of joy, of faith. You see the young bride and groom standing beneath the soft silver moonlight, their hands clasped, their eyes bright. Around them, the quiet sleeping village glows with a gentle warmth, the warm light of the hearths, the soft silver glow of the moon, the quiet whispered dreams of those who sleep. But even in this peaceful, shadowed world, there is always a quiet, gentle warmth, a sense that love is not just a promise, but a light that shines through the darkness, a light that never fades. So now close your eyes. Feel the cool, gentle breeze against your face, the soft silver moonlight dancing on your cheeks. Hear the quiet whispered laughter, the soft cheerful songs, the warm crackling fire. And let your heart be light, let your dreams be warm, let your soul be at peace. Because even in the darkest night, even beneath the gray, misty sky, there is always a light whispered in laughter, in love, in joy. Sleep well, traveler. May your dreams be filled with light. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.